Welcome to the very first episode of FS Podcasts. FS Podcast is a student initiative at Frankfurt School. What we do is each episode we discuss a diverse topic. This topic being about Frankfurt and the new capital, being the new capital of European banking, but also about Frankfurt School. And we talk about those topics with our guests, who are usually experts on the topic or even students.
And we like to connect these topics. It's better than reading off a page or getting out of a book. We need to connect you with the people who know it best, the real experts. And we also like to sit here and have a spotlight on some of the activities and the students and see what they're up to on the new FS campus. Now, without further ado, I'm Danny Bosstetter here with my co-host Anwar Sawyer. And we are very happy to represent to you Dr. Udo Steffens.
Professor Dr. Udo Steffens.
Professor Dr. Udo Steffens.
Thank you for having me.
Mind if we call you Udo?
You can call me Udo.
Okay, so Udo, I mean, it feels so great. We're at the new campus. We're in the presence of all of our students, and we're very happy to have you as the first guest on our very first show. It's kind of inspiring for us.
I'm trying to find a way to connect everything. Yeah, but I think we want to start out. Let's say a little bit from Frankfurt. We need to hear a little bit more about you. We need to know who is Professor Dr. Udo Steffens. Udo, because you're a bit of an enigma to some of the students. I mean, you talk to a lot of them, but some of us see you walking up and down the place, and we're like, wow.
Yeah,
so I'll meet that guy someday.
Well, very nice. So I'm a northerner, so I'm also a little bit like a lot of Germans stranded in the middle of Germany, which is the natural capital, which is obviously Frankfurt. And I'm working with Frankfurt School since '92, coming back from Africa from an assignment for 4 years. And so I was hired to be more the international guy, and already at that time in '92 to internationalize the Frankfurt School, mainly also student exchange, but also international projects, but certainly also staff and professor exchange. So my vocation in the first 4 years working with Frankfurt School was more on the internationalization and to connect the Frankfurt School with the outside world.
Okay, so where did you grow up? So you're from Hessen, the area?
No, I'm not from. I'm a northerner. This means I'm from Friesland, so I'm an Ostfriese, which always creates a lot of laughter about the rest of the Germans. But this is a let's say a land which is very near to Holland and to the islands and to the Northern Sea. Mm-hmm. It's flat, and so it's quite let's say fashionable to being from there, even if that area is not as growing fast as Frankfurt is doing. But now with the energy change and the windmills, brings also some money to that piece of land.
Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about that then. How was it? Did you grow up there? Did you spend?
I grew up there. I went to school there, and then following my academic studies in Münster and in Darmstadt. And then finally, I worked in the first years as a teacher at a professional school in Oldenburg. Mm-hmm. Then I went to the international side of the world. So I was in Togo, Africa, which is a former colony of Germany. Mm-hmm. And then, still working a little bit with the Frankfurt School as a freelance lecturer. They hired me in '92 as, let's say, the head of the then created international office. So then I was in, and I'm still here.
So interesting. You have a lot of international experience. Did you also have a semester abroad when you were going through your
No, this was quite uncommon. I was considering that when I studied political science and economics at the University of Münster, to at least consider a stay abroad. And then the international office there proposed me to go to Kalamazoo, which was in the Midlands, somewhere in the US. I looked at the map, I said, this is perhaps not my choice.
Yeah,
then
I'm being from the United States.
So then I decided to go, and then I spent more or less a year in Paris and preparing my PhD on the development of the European Union. And at that time, in the late 80s and the mid 80s, there was a lot of literature, the late 70s and mid 70s, was a lot of literature still in French. So then I acquired and learned French, and this was quite also, let's say, a third foreign language, which certainly...
It's more practical using Google Translate nowadays.
Well, today it's easier, and French speaking is certainly going down. It has been overwhelmed by English speaking world.
Mm. So on that, on that time, we saw in an article that you were once a decathlete. So are you still in the track and field? Do you still run at this time?
I do run usually, and I have been a marathoni. At least I did 8 to 9, and my best time was 3:08 when I was 38. So it's not under 3 hours, which is normally the big challenge, but it's also a time of.
You're right there on the
still running. I think it's the best way, because you can do it everywhere, and even if you are at least at business meetings around the world, you always can have 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour to do a little bit of sport and run through the city. So you have also another perspective, which I usually
So should we schedule the next FS running?
I mean, I think the sport initiative is certainly something which is coming through. We will have a fitness club here at campus. I think it's very much demanded by the students, not integrated in the building, because our initial idea was to develop that with our neighboring sports club, the Frankfurt 1880 club, but it did not come through for different reasons. So we do our own initiative, and I thought this will very much, loved by especially young students.
Yes. I'd like to take a little pivot away from and talk about FS. Before, when we were doing our research, we saw that you came in at FS when it was just a banking institute, and now where FS is, Frankfurt School is one of the top. I think it's the top finance program in Master of Finance program in Germany,
yes,
but also one of the top business school in the world. How has that happened? Tell us about that process.
I mean, the Bank Academy, so our predecessor, the Banking Institute, was always also a top institution only for bankers in the non-degree program area. And then in '89, that institution finally invented a very specialized business school and or university only for bankers. And then, I mean, the former Banking Institute and the business school for bankers coexist. And we thought, this is perhaps not a quite complicated situation. And then we merged also content-wise and label-wise, because legally it was always one institution. We merged this into the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, and the word "and management" is also highlighting that we are not only a business school for financiers, but also for generic management questions. And so we a little bit double bind. We do certainly banking and finance a lot, but we do more and more also management for other industries.
That's kind of diversified it a little bit. You kind of like put it all together. Speaking of that, I mean, you talk about all this international experience you've had and how you wanted to diversify things. How has that diversification transformed Frankfurt School? You put this management program together, and then you've been calling for international students. I mean, this Frankfurt School is like a completely different animal from what it used to be at this point. And how much did diversification play into that?
I mean, the main driver was certainly also students, because when we started with our academic bachelor's program at that time, in former time, the German language, a diploma program, there was the idea and to have a compulsory semester abroad. So we always had the situation that students were not asked if, and perhaps they have to go to an international place, study and work. So it was embedded in the so-called curriculum. And this was at minimum 1 semester to study and at least 12 weeks to work, if possible at that time, in the same language family. So if you go to Spain, you should also have an intern in a Spanish company speaking and practice your Spanish. And those students came back and they said, Udo, have you seen that? Udo, have you seen that? And we should do that, and we should cooperate with that university. So a main driver of that internationalization as far as the programs and also people are concerned were finally students. And I think this is amazing how they gave their input and also their connection which they created with business schools and universities abroad. And that certainly opened up the horizon of different people in the school. And I think this is one pillar of our internationalization. The other pillar is what has finally resulted in our international advisory service. When the wall came down in Berlin, and then in the year 91, 92, 93, and the next years, the telephone was always ringing. Could you do could you do banker's qualification in Poland, in Russia, in Tajikistan, in Kazakhstan, in certainly the Middle East, and also certainly in Bulgaria and Croatia.
Yes,
So we developed a lot of executive trainings in those countries, which then emerged into our international development finance advisory services with our competency in banking and finance, which then developed into microfinance, development finance, sustainable energy, and climate finance. So we also have now a quite international, renowned international, let's say, consulting and advisory services, which connects and combines intelligently, let's say, science and research and teaching with advisory projects around the world. Mainly now with a strong focus on Africa, sub-Saharan Africa.
Sub-Saharan.
Yeah.
You mentioned the advisory services, but I think many of the students or people that are familiar with Frankfurt School only see it as a school. Can you tell us all of what's all under the umbrella of Frankfurt School?
I mean, under the umbrella, there are main, let's say, three pillars. Pillar one is certainly the academic area, which is bachelor, master's, PhD program, and the research area. Yes. Then the other, more or less volume-wise and turnover-wise, at a similar size, are the international advisory services, which are growing fast, seeing the international challenges, especially as far as qualifications of young people around the world is concerned. And the third is a little bit composed out of the remaining product portfolio of the former banking institute and out of professional and executive education, which again has more or less the same size than the other two pillars. It's even a little bit bigger still. So the business model of a non-public, let's say, government-funded institution is that we lose money, finally, in the academic programs, despite our fees, but we make a margin in those other two pillars, which then compensates to a quite healthy financial situation. So, I mean, in Germany, where, let's say, private education is quite still rare because everything is financed by the government, you have to look about the added value you give to the students and how do you finance those added value. And we did it in that way, which is certainly highly path dependent from our, let's say, emergence in '56 to today, to 2017.
Do you get any kind of kickback being one of the few private universities in Germany? I know that's kind of a bit, I heard recently they added some fees, and I think the UK was like 60 euros for students, and there was a huge uproar. And just looking at the way things are in Germany, if there was ever a movement towards that, I'm sure that there would be a similar reaction. Is it kind of a...
I mean, in Germany, especially in continental European, university education is free. If it is in Spain, Italy, or especially in Scandinavia, but also certainly and mainly also in Germany, also in the Eastern world. Because, this is a little bit let's say, the justice aspect, if it's true or not, because it's not true. And it's certainly also a kind of, let's say, distribution of welfare, because very often the kids of the middle class go to university, they don't pay for it, in order to become a medical doctor, a dentist, and to earn a lot of money, because we all know that university education positively correlates with higher income. And in Germany, we see that the filter of students coming to university, the social filter is working quite well, meaning that the family, the social status of the family decides finally more than in the US and or in other countries if you go to university and or not. So we think it's fair that middle class families and or students who have a good job perspective should pay at least partial for their education, which is not the case. So there are some exemptions, like the Frankfurt School. There's certainly the WHU, there is ESMT, there are a few 5-6 which are at university rank, which are well underway. And you see a lot of, let's say, very successful schools, which we would call polytechnics, or in German Fachhochschulen, which do have a lot of students and who meet the needs of different, let's say, levels of the society, who wants to upgrade their educational
But the trade
level.
schools.
It's a trade schools. Well, it's not vocational schools. They have, let's say, University of Applied Status, of Applied Sciences status.
Okay.
They are less research focused. They don't have PhD awarding rights so far, but they are quite successful in providing future managers and future engineers for the economy of Germany. And it's one of the backbones of the German educational system, one of the strengths, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they are in the private sector quite successful because the demand to have, let's say, a research university-like oriented faculty is not as strong, things like that. So it's a little bit different, but we decided to opt for the so-called economic university way. And that's why we upgraded our faculty in the last 10 years tremendously. So that we consider, as far as current research output is concerned, certainly to be number one and or number two in Germany, and we also can compete with the big comprehensive universities.
And how much has Europe moving its banking capital to Germany changed or influenced that decision? I mean, you're going to be attracting more of the high-income students at this point because they're attracted to the opportunities in Frankfurt.
I mean, certainly. Our location is in Frankfurt. We consider, and we do have it in our SWOT analysis as a strength.
Right. Yes.
Because also worldwide, if you speak about Frankfurt, due to the airport, and certainly also as far as the location of the European Central Bank is concerned, everybody has an image, in his mind. If you speak about other bigger cities in Germany, it will be already a little bit more complicated. So Frankfurt is certainly a big supportive factor as far as our growth potential is concerned. And the new developments concerning Brexit will mean that if Brexit, in whatever way it will be negotiated, it's quite clear today that Frankfurt will have big profits out of that. So it's also already clear that they will getting the windfall profits. It's less Paris, it's less Dublin, it's less Luxembourg because of different reasons. It's easier and more convenient for people who have headquartered there, who have their headquarters in London to move it to Frankfurt. So this will bring a lot of, let's say, top managers and their families into the city, and they are used to international standardized, let's say, education, meaning bachelor, master's, English speaking, though we see there also on the bachelor's level a rising demand for our offerings to the market. So again, Frankfurt is good for us, and not only for finance, but also for, let's say, general management. And so the overall geopolitical situation, at least the European situation, will help us. And certainly one of the main catalysts is that we have the European Central Bank. Even if that is not business, but at least is a higher level of regulation, supervisory, and monetary policy. It helps a lot.
So we want you to confirm something. We read, and we're not too sure about it, that you are a financial advisor to the Minister of Finance on deliberations about Brexit. Is that true?
No, I'm invited here and there to a kind of round table from the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Hessen, which is the regional, let's say, Länder minister, and he always assembles experts about information and really in order to raise cross-cutting ideas what should be done to smoothen the process and to convince international operators, mainly now located in London, to consider Germany, meaning Frankfurt, as their hub.
Yeah.
So that's that the university presidents from Hessen are always a little bit one of those, let's say, experts which are asked to give their advice to the political class in order to smoothen the process.
Are there any secret in the meeting insights that you can give students on ways to capitalize off of?
I mean, it's always good to be flexible, and if you're invited, I mean, sometimes it's good to spend the time, and it's a little bit of, let's say, opportunity hopping. Very often you go to a meeting and you don't see any result, but it's not very often. It's not a linear process. Very often you meet people randomly, and you have a chance to talk to them and to talk about Frankfurt School, or about their, let's say, aspects where they want to raise. And this means a network building is certainly in our complex world of more, let's say, importance and value as it has been. It's not only necessary to be a good, let's say, student and academically bright, but you also have to communicate, you have to be in the networks, you have to take care that somebody is calling you if there is a problem, that you are involved, because you can't say yes or no if you don't know about the case, you know.
Yes.
So you have to create the options, and options come to your table, and then you make the choice, yes or no, I want to be involved and or not. So this is certainly a situation where Frankfurt has to come into as far as business schools development is concerned. We're not yet there, but we are near to that situation.
You have two international students here, one from the US and the Bahamas. And we'd like to know, how much has internationalism or the approach to spread diversity contributed to the success of Frankfurt School?
I think today, compared with, let's say, 12, 15 years ago, this is a complete different animal. I think especially the international students that we now have more or less also at the bachelor's level, 80% of our courses are taught in English. The master program is, with one exception, I think it's completely entirely taught in English, has certainly changed the whole, let's say, atmosphere and the game, because international students bring in their, let's say, way of life, how they consider the world, how they interpret the world. And this is certainly different if you do it only from a German perspective. This means also the encountering in the classroom, working on assignments, working on different, let's say, group works and presentations is certainly also for, let's call it the national students or the continental European students, to have people from overseas, I think a value added. And I think especially for such a nation like ours, which is highly, highly dependent. I mean, they are the champion as far as export is concerned, so they are highly dependent from the outside world. It's necessary to be interconnected and to train already at the campus that internationalism, speaking foreign languages, really encountering different cultural patterns, where there's no right or wrong, it's just different. And I think this is an amazing experience we can provide today for our national and for our international students. And seeing a little bit the situation of the world, I mean, Germany in this time span, you know, the last 10 years and certainly a few years to go, is a place to be. Must not always be Berlin, can also be Frankfurt.
Yeah. I mean, speaking on that just a little bit, I mean, working with other people, as you were saying, in group projects or business cases, you kind of have to look through their eyes and see through a different lens, because everyone brings a different culture to the table, and that means that their negotiation is always different, the way they tackle projects. It's just always so diverse. I mean, I hate to use that word so often, but it's like a great word. It's really... Yeah.
You know what it is too, Danny? It's everyone brings their own unique knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that they have from their own national base that helps to deal with problems. So I think you can share about that too. Like I experience it every day in class. Like we had a presentation today, and I had group mates who were from China, mm-hmm. and just the experience they brought to it was totally different. And it was, I think we ended up scoring well, hopefully. So
yeah, I hope also for you.
Speaking a bit about our curriculum and also touching back on sub-Saharan Africa, we're about to actually head over to Kenya and do some company visits, and see the country and the continent through our own eyes. And Africa's got quite a bit of a layer to it. And I've also heard that Frankfurt School, you're talking about in Togo, and also you're doing financial literacy courses directly through Kenya.
Yes. We do a lot of, let's say, projects internationally, but our main, let's say, hub is certainly now Sub-Saharan Africa. Mm. We do a little bit also in Northern Africa, so more the, let's say, Arabic countries, but we just run a big project in SADC. This is a South African Development Corporation, where we introduce, let's say, SME aspects into the banks, but we also work with universities in order to introduce elements in their curriculum as far as entrepreneurship and running small and medium-sized enterprise companies. What does it mean? How we should really educate young students in order to enhance their employability. In order to accommodate all that, we have since years a project office in Nairobi, which is the headquarters for our, let's say, sub-Saharan Frankfurt School operations. So more project-driven, financed by the World Bank and certainly KfW and or the European Investment Bank. So this is our main, the international financial institutions who finance our operations. What we also do since now 8 years, so we have another hub in Kinshasa, Congo, which is one of those megapolis cities, which is geopolitical quite important. And there we run since 8 years now the German Congolese Center for Microfinance, where we support the Protestant University. They deliver a Master of Science in Microfinance, and all those graduates have very bright and good employment opportunities. They're all employed, and on that base we said, what's going on here? There's no really high-level management education, so we introduced as the first international school an executive MBA, and we are now in intake number 5. And in each class we finally managed to get in 38, 40 people, let's say bright, high-level managers, and they enjoy very much that kind of education. And we just talked about in the last weeks about a new Frankfurt School Africa initiative, because there are two aspects. This is is Africa the continent of the future? Question mark, not clear. But certainly there are hubs of growth. Right. Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, Botswana, Ethiopia are certainly, but there are also a lot of situations which are situations of misery. And
right.
We have a lot of, let's say, refugee aspects in Africa, but also we all talk every day about the migration pressure into Europe. And certainly there's another reason that if there are no, let's say, job and personal life perspective, people will just run. And this will not stop. So this means that within the African economies and nations, there must be, at any price, must be the inner, let's say, manufacturing and production and inner, let's say, economic circle aspects must be bettered and enhanced, because they cannot live only from exporting commodities, because it's clear in that time span that seeing the problems of the commodity prices, that commodity-based development models will fail, and they failed again and again. So this is clear now. So there has to be done more investments, especially in education.
Yeah, because I mean, you're losing a lot. What they're losing a lot through brain drain. I mean, that's just been happening for the last 40 years. It's just there's always opportunities in Europe. And so, does this new project that you're working on kind of counteract that in a small way?
Well, in a small way.
I
think we adopted a strategy. We do not deal with the overall geopolitical complexity of a continent. We said, okay, let's do what we can, which is our first and also our. So we are not a philanthropic institution.
Right.
Let's do things which are our own interests, which makes money. Yes. But if possible, also contributes to the development of a given economy now in.
It's always good to have
in Congo. I mean. This philanthropic aspect is perhaps nice, but we see after decades of official development aid that those results, to be nice, are quite mediocre.
Being a banking school, gotta look through the eyes of a financier.
Well, we wouldn't call us a banking school, or a management school with a focus on banking. Nevertheless,
Yes. You mentioned in the article earlier, I think it may have been last year, that for Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, to make the next step, they would need more professional business schools to be able to lead to the next leaders of the country.
And there is empirical evidence in certainly also in Kenya, but also in other like Francophone countries like Congo, Kinshasa, Congo, Brazzaville, but also in cities like Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali, Cameroon, that if you don't have, let's say, managers which have followed an internationally oriented, standardized academic management education, they cannot, on an eye level, communicate with incoming international global companies. And though this means also that the internal growth potential is systematically, let's say, stopped by the non-availability of well-educated managers, younger and elderly ones. So this means then they have to bring in expats, and an expat from the US and from Germany costs at least certainly 4 times, because kids have to go to international school, you have to provide housing and security. So there is no way that there's no alternative to educate people surplus, meaning then to introduce an MBA, international, recognized and standardized and proven educational product, which everybody knows, everybody accepts, and this is on a postgraduate level, the MBA, full stop, no question, and that we did, and quite successfully, and the individual and or in our international firms are easily ready to pay for it. So fair enough. Certainly for our professors, if you say, could you travel to Congo and deliver a course, they may be afraid, looking at the Foreign Office alert, don't travel, and seeing all the diseases you may grasp there, but
problems with elections, which we're dealing with.
But very often you do not die immediately. It's a very nice experience.
It's like a good lesson of life. You don't die immediately.
Even if you're there for 5-6 days, this is a big eye opener, as you have seen in Kenya. It is an eye opener, even if Kenya is a soft landing in sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
But nevertheless, it is sub-Saharan Africa. So it's dark, it's black, there's a lot of, and it's colored, and there's a lot of dynamics over there, and it's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities to make money there, in a good way.
In a good way. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, we really learned about the need for, I think you mentioned it, the enterprising culture. Need to establish managers that do business. You see this in Africa, but do you also see this in other regions as ways for FS to expand worldwide?
We certainly see in Africa a lot of, and we have even a professor who does a lot of research as far as Africa strategy and Africa entrepreneurship is concerned. But the Frankfurt School will certainly focus more on entrepreneurship as it has done before, because has been a more, let's say, monoliner in just providing young talents for the bankers. Bankers, people who wants to be a finance officer, they think about, entering at the trading floor, having no downside risk, only upside risk, and making a lot of money as an investment banker and or working in an M&A, let's say, division. Today, I think, seeing also the overall development possibilities of the finance industry, which are certainly limited, we are more broader in our overall perspective. So we will do more as far as the preparation of our students to be future entrepreneurs, to co-found, to create a new company and or do things which are more to the markets as such. So we will certainly in the next few months establish a Frankfurt lab where there is a special location where you can go to a laboratorium, not with the immediate idea to create a new company, but just to experiment. I have an idea as far as that product line and that service line and that is concerned. Must not be all the time fintech. Fintech can also be a new soft drink, can also be a new burger, whatever it is. Yes. This will be guided by innovation officers and encountering, perhaps here and there together with professor. And if it leads to a creation of a new company, okay, this would be the best case, but it's not necessary. I think today the younger generation is really considering to be their own, the master of their own destiny.
Yes.
They do not want to be an employee and be depending and things like that. So I think it is also certainly a kind of, what the Germans would call it, zeitgeist. But it's certainly also a little bit of what people today expect from a business school as a service, and we will do so.
A lot of students, now that we're talking about millennials going through school, a lot of them are focused on finding purpose in their work. Like you were saying, they want to be the masters of their own destiny. Now, what is the one tip that you would give to these new students coming through where they can find purpose in the jobs that they're looking for, enjoying what they do?
I think they should really hear their so-called inner voice and really look for opportunities, make a lot of, as let's say, interns and or let's say for short job assignments, look at different angles of businesses, not only finance and or manufacturing or consulting, and or the big fours or things like that. Really look also in smaller companies. I think also looking into the so-called German hidden champions. So if there is an opportunity to be in those very often family-driven companies, which are internationally very often the champion in a niche market, and then after that, after 3-4 aspects of those experience, then deciding on the direction they want to go to. And then certainly in that direction, really being dedicated and full speed ahead. If it's wrong, you are young enough to finally alter the direction and to step back and look for a new opportunity. But it's certainly, if you have a good feeling to be hired by that and that company or to create that and that, then you should do it. And then you should really be focused and dedicated, and then with a lot of energy, full speed ahead. And I think especially German companies will appreciate that attitude. And the smaller the company is, the more, let's say champ de manœuvre, so maneuvering field a young graduate will have. If you go to a big, let's say, blue chip company, they are a little bit like a public sector organization. They're quite organized. The processes are in front of everything. So this may hamper creativity, but it's also, if you personally need, you are more, let's say, a security, you need a lot of, let's say, social security, then you are better in that situation, than going to a startup or to a smaller company somewhere in a remote area where, it's only one company and the rest is a small village. So I think continental Europe, but also Germany, will provide a lot of opportunities for young people. It's not there's no one size fits all.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes, and then look around for those jobs that you maybe wouldn't have considered in the first place. And because if you don't have your specialization right in front of you, or if you haven't found something that really just clicks with you immediately, don't force it. That's the way to
try things. Try it.
I mean, if somebody, let's say, a lot of our graduates, and the last time a few, not a lot, and that's about 3 to 4, went to Porsche Consulting. So you have consulting and Porsche, and this is certainly appealing for a lot of people, but for others, not appealing. And it's a niche consulting. It's not McKinsey, it's not Bain, it's not Boston Consulting, but certainly a smaller, fast-growing consulting firm. I mean, based in Stuttgart. So. And then it's certainly a nice, dedicated group. Why not? If this fits your perspective and your knowledge, and if the atmosphere in that group is okay, then go ahead. But if you also may go into the finance department of Siemens, which is a worldwide champion, but certainly the patterns and the style of working and the interactions between the different elements and the persons is different. So make your choice. I think Frankfurt School is providing all those company contacts for the students so that they may have good offers from all those mentioned institutions. And then it's up to them. I think we did our job in bringing you options to the table, and then if those options materialize, it's your turn to perform.
It's really exciting.
And don't mess it up, because if you mess it up, this means also that this firm will no longer recruit students from Frankfurt School. So if there is...
Keep to the honor code.
Yeah, do it to the honor code and please perform, because they ask for performance.
No, I'm excited. We have a company visit for Daimler in about a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
you are in the master management?
Yeah. Well, soon to be the Master Management International Business. We're the International Business class right here.
Oh, you're
the one that's about to be the International Management Specialization.
Our favorite class.
Yes. So, it's just, you guys have given us so many opportunities to go and see different places like Miele, become business to Daimler.
Vodafone,
and we always make these new connections there. People that are looking for internships, saying things that we
traineeships,
never would have thought of. And it's just
certainly the so-called war for talents has certainly started. It's a quite hot war, especially for not companies which are not based in the centers. because a lot of, Daimler certainly in Stuttgart, but there's a lot of promising international companies which are still a little bit in the woods, so in the provinces and quite remote, and they do have problems to recruit international experienced, let's say, graduates. But it's worthwhile to consider that at least for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in order to make up a career, because those companies are very international. And they always look for international graduates, which are then ready to represent the firm in Brazil, in the United States, in China, in Indonesia, and other international countries. So they need international mobile personnel.
As we look forward, what is your vision for FS, Frankfurt School, going forward? You've mentioned advisory services. Yeah.
I mean, our vision is to be the, let's say, business school, at least in Germany, which is clearly and certainly number one as far as research and program rankings and program positioning is concerned. Certainly also as far as international research output is concerned. And to be in the top league, let's call it the champion leagues of European business school, which then in the next, let's say, decade has a chance to be in a top position also as far as the family of international, meaning global business schools are concerned. Then it's quite, let's say, a quite awkward situation that you still have a global economy, which is number 2, 3, 4, 5, depends a little bit how you measure. So you are in a top world-class economy. But if you consider this from the outside world, where the top-class business school, you still are a little bit, who is it? It's not clear. So there is a vacuum, and we want to fill that vacuum. Certainly other schools are also running into that corner to be number one, public and also private ones. But I think Frankfurt School, being located in one of the top cities in Germany and in Europe, has a fair chance to be that school. But I mean, it's an open competition. It's a marathon, and if you are a marathoni, we are only at least, let's say, kilometer 22 or 23. So we have the 30s, and then we have, after 38,
Yes.
you are coming in that, let's say, oxygen complicated situation. And this has to be mastered. And if you do that, then you may be certainly number one in Germany and being in the Champions League. It will need another few years.
Well, obviously, you're off to a strong start at this point. I mean, I'm happy to be here. And I've seen this new campus, honestly. It's just amazing. It's a night and day difference of what can just happen.
Thank you.
Yes,
yeah, this was intended.
Good. Yeah.
And I mean, you see around that students obviously like it. When we opened the door, I said, students are like water. They really flow in every corner, and they immediately, within a day, they occupied that campus. Even there was still a lot of no-go areas normally, but they're everywhere because the doors were difficult to close them. They really occupied it in bracket, and I think this is a quite positive sign for the students and for the building.
Because if I'm right, wasn't this supposed to be a position for the Ministry of Finance?
I mean, this is the piece of land where we have built that, the real estate, is if Frankfurt would have been the so-called provisorial capital of Germany and not Bonn, then this would be let's say, the neighborhood where the German government would have been. And that specific former building would have been the Ministry of Finance. So it's a nice illusion, and as far as the overall development and the historical place is concerned, we should consider that and be proud of our location.
Yeah.
Well, we have some questions that we ask each guest that comes on the FS podcast. And a few out of the park, just to see what drove you throughout your career. The first question coming from me is, who is the person that you look up to most, and why?
So I'm not prepared for that question. So there was no storyboard for that. I'm looking mainly up to my mother, which was guiding me a long time as far as my life is concerned. She protected me and guided me in a good and a very, very, let's say, soft way, which finally resulted in a quite nice career as head of Frankfurt School and also at the international experience. And it's important because I have 10 brothers and sisters, which is quite rare in Germany also, and even at that time. So a big family, and nevertheless, so I'm proud, especially, and guided and influenced by by my mother.
It's good to hear. It's always good to hear that. Here's a little bit of a different question here. What's the best job perk you've ever had?
The best job?
Job perk, as in like a benefit or something that you've had, and a small thing, like I get the company car or...
It was not a company car. When I started here, this is a good question. Yeah. When I started here as the international officer, I was still located in Oldenburg, which is a city near Bremen, and I had to commute all the weekends, and it was quite expensive. And my predecessor, Dr. Reimuth, said to me in a talk, what can I do else for you? I say, if you would like to do me a favor, please pay me 100% bond card. So this was a card where you could enter in every train and ride in Germany as long as you want. And this was certainly, I still remember that. And because it was finally at that stage of the professional development, a quite nice, let's say, added value. It helped a lot. And I found that was even not so much money, but it was a very positive sign. And obviously with that, he motivated me and appreciated my contributions to the development of Frankfurt School.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah.
And I think the third question would be, what's your favorite book?
I don't really have a favorite book. I here and there read from an English author, Mr. Cornwell, which is writing historical novels about the post-Roman time in Britain, about all those different wars and the invasion of the Vikings and the Normans and the Frisians and the Saxons. And so I would call it Mr. Cornwell is one of my favorite author, which is quite nice reading those books during the holidays.
But that's the real ones,
Yeah, not high-level literature. It's just, nice to read and easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. Moving on. I was
going to ask one more question.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Yeah, I like this question a lot because it's very it's telling. If you had a time machine right now and you could go back, speak to 20-year-old Udo for just a minute, what's that one piece of advice that you give to yourself all the way back then?
Create your own enterprise.
Create your own?
Don't be an employee. At least work in an institution where you have entrepreneurial freedom in order to shape the world and make an impact.
Wow. That's advice I'll take.
No, I'll take that. I'll definitely take that. Yeah, that was...
I mean, it's all about freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't understood in former times if you have your own show, if you have your own company and or you work on your own, you are free.
Right.
Yes.
This certainly comes with this comes with a price.
Mm-hmm.
But you are not employed, so you have not to be, if you don't want to, at 9 o'clock or 8:30 in the office and things like that. So if you have the energy and the talent, it is an option. It's more dangerous. It's less safe. But it's also, again, zeitgeist driven, when I was 20, it was the 70s. It was a post-68. It was still the 68s. It was about socialism, Marxism, about revolution.
Right.
Yes. So it was, we were all more or less left wings. If you have had brain, you were a left wing, more or less, social democrat at least. Yes. So this was certainly an interesting time. So our, let's say, vision as far as our personal development and the development of society was completely different, had nothing to do of what we have today. So it was a nice, let's say, journey to see it at yourself, how you changed and via learning, via experience, via encountering especially international fellows.
That's very insightful. I took that. Next, we at FS Podcast, we always try to highlight FS student and achievement, Frankfurt student achievement. that said, yeah, so we like to highlight Frankfurt student achievement. And this episode, we would like to highlight Frankfurt School Consulting, Frankfurt School Consulting, student consulting. So far, what we can say that they've achieved over 100,000 in revenues in the last 2 years, which we see as a big initiative. And they're also 100% subsidiary of Frankfurt School. Dr. Steffens, Udo, you can tell us more about that.
One day, students came into my office and they said, "We have that." It's a few years ago already. At least there were 2 attempts to create that initiative. The first group were finally stranded for whatever reason, but the second group really brought it to life and really then created. And there was a lot of debate what would be the legal framework. And at the end of the day, especially the head of our administration, Ms. Christian, said, why not creating that as a 100% subsidiary of Frankfurt School? Then there is continuation. And even if students leave the company, the framework and the legal framework is still alive. And if the new student cohort takes the initiative to drive it forward. So I think it's a very nice and very good initiative, which really brings all of the knowledge of young students, the fresh wind, the new eyes, the young eyes to a given situation at a company. And I think a lot of those companies do profit a lot of those advice. We even asked Frankfurt School Consulting to give advice as far as the gym is concerned, the Frankfurt School Fitness Center, the so-called Sport and Health Initiative. And this has also been designed and finally calculated and presented by the Frankfurt School Consulting Group.
It's definitely something worth checking out.
Yes, they did it.
Yeah.
We like to highlight student achievement and also in all forms. We can fix this.
Move it back a little bit.
Yes, I think you can let it go. It should. Yes.
Okay. Tone is okay?
Yeah, the tone. Yeah. So, with that said, I think we're near the conclusion of our very first episode. Thank you so much, Udo, for coming
and talking to you
and talking to us.
Yeah.
And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for listening to the very first episode of FS Podcasts. We will release episodes monthly on various topics. And you can find our episodes, or please feel free to comment, to like, if you enjoyed it, on the links below. And you can please comment on topics that you'd like to hear. Any feedback will be greatly warranted. We'd love to hear it. And with that said,
we hope you enjoyed.
Take care.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for your initiative. It's a very good initiative, I think.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
It really was an honor.
Yeah.